We're so grateful for your participation tonight. So with that, quick other introductions. I want to say thank you very much to my colleagues in the Department of Planning and Community Development, specifically Erin Zwerko, who's in the back. She's the Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. Julie Wayman, who is the Community Development Block Grant Administrator. Kelly Linema, who is the Senior Planner, also helping tonight. And then our friends at MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, who are helping us with the data collection, the analysis, and then the recommendations that we're going to be talking about a little bit more this evening. Depending upon what happens next, there will be a lot more conversations about this, or things might be a little bit different, because we're talking about this the week before the redevelopment board will be going into a great more detail on these topics. So I think that that's all the introducing. And oh, and I'm sorry, one other person, Whitney, who is in the back. Whitney is with the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, CHAPA. And then I think we also have some members of the Housing Plan Implementation Committee here. Maybe not, yes. Hi, thank you for being here. And the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And then last but not least, the Arlington Redevelopment Board. I believe there are 3 members here this evening. So with that, as I said, I'm making some introductions. You're gonna have a little over an hour to go through different stations in the room to learn about different components of things that we've been talking about. And then we're gonna do a wrap up. Why are we here? There's about a dozen reasons why we're here. I'm just gonna run through the presentation and then be happy to take any questions. What do you need?
Yes. I wanted to say there were 3 members of the redevelopment board here.
Yes.
This is because it's being posted as a public hearing.
It's posted as a meeting right now, yes. We're having a meeting. Yep. Okay, so why are we here this evening? There's a number of reasons why we're all here this evening. The first one is that I think we all feel that there's need. Not everybody expresses it in the same ways in terms of we realize that there's a housing issue, there's housing demand, but we think of it in different regards. Some people talk about it in terms of the middle class, and that the middle income households in Arlington and beyond are pinched. And then other people know that there's issues with lower income households and extremely low income households who have no ability to access safe, affordable housing opportunities, both in Arlington and beyond. So there's really very strong evidence of demonstrated need, not just in Arlington to address this issue, but well beyond that in Greater Boston. And plenty of further analysis and information about that. But we know in particular that sales prices have been rising faster than incomes in general. And so one of the components of this effort is to make things more affordable. So we are talking about multifamily housing. It's a broad topic, but there are opportunities within that to talk about affordability. And of course, we're interested in both of those, market rate and affordable homes. We also know that more than 1 in 4 households have low incomes who already are here in town. There are already people here with demonstrated needs who we still need to help, who we still want to be able to provide a home to live in Arlington, who shouldn't have to be moving out of town in order to find a more affordable place to live. And 1 in 3 households right now are spending more than 30% of their gross household income on housing because they're already pinched by the fact that it's difficult to afford a home, whether you're renting or you're owning. And that's very challenging. That's more than 5,600 households. A couple of years ago is when this data was put together as part of the housing production plan. But there's a lot of people who are already in need, and we want to assist them. Another really critical population, and one that will be continuing to grow in Arlington, is low-income seniors. They're already spending an even higher proportion of their income on housing than any other population or demographic within the population in Arlington. And that's really a critical group of people who are living either in single-family homes right now or in other places where they cannot afford to continue to live. So that's some of the components of the basis of why we are here tonight. But there's other reasons why we're here, because we're trying to find ways to encourage both good design, to maximize the building envelope, which means really be able to put things together on a site, put together mixed-use development, multifamily housing, and mixed income. All of those things relate to these proposals. And we see it as being compact and sustainable development. It is, because we're talking about our primary corridors, and about 4 to 5% of our land right now is zoned as, if you look at actually one of the maps, which I don't think is in this presentation, but they're all around us, the medium and high density residential districts occupy about 5% of the land area in Arlington. It is not a very large amount, and it is predominantly located along the main corridors. So that's primarily what we're discussing this evening. The other parts that we're going to be hearing about a little bit this evening, because not all of the proposals relate to the business districts, but those that do, that's 4% roughly of our total land area. So all told, we're talking about 9% of land area related to these proposals that will be discussed in Arlington. We want to be able to realize the benefits of multifamily housing, which includes affordable housing, in places that are actually already zoned as higher density districts for residential development. Those are the R4, R5, R6, and R7. They're already zoned that way. And actually in our zoning bylaw, they're already described that way. So we don't even have to change the definition, because it's already described as being a place where there would be high density housing. And so that's what we're really trying to do here. We're trying to align the zoning bylaw with the master plan goals, with the housing production plan goals, and actually a number of other goals that are in plans about sustainability, climate resiliency and adaptation, and some of the recent transportation initiatives that we've been working on. They all line up to say, we want to support growth along our major corridors, and we want those changes to be able to happen in a way that makes sense to Arlington. So with that, I want to tell you a little bit about the project timeline before turning it over to Alexis Smith, who has been doing the bulk of work on this project. We received a grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, as well as MAPC, in order to do this technical analysis. It's basically technical assistance. We actually received the grant, I think, in December of 2017. No, 2018. 2017, sorry. We began, yes? Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, EOEEA, and MAPC. The zoning analysis actually started in earnest from May to June of last year, followed by a parcel analysis where we looked at specific parcels along the corridors and did a little bit of a deeper dive to understand what could happen on those sites, sort of like build out. And that then led to an even deeper build out analysis, which is what you're going to hear a little bit more about, which then led into the discussion around what are some of the constraints, why does this look like an obstacle course, and how can we make some recommendations that are acceptable to change and then form into zoning language to move to a town meeting. And so the build-out analysis began September to October. We have been meeting with a working group, which is basically as part of a lot of the projects that we do in our office. We try to bring in a handful of people who can support us with that technical analysis. So we had a couple of those group meetings back in September and October, and a third one in November. Went to the redevelopment board on December 17th to share a lot of this. And then many of you know about that, and also know about the meeting that we had last week where we continued the conversation. The next conversation is going to be on January 16th. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Alexis, who will tell you a little bit more about what she reviewed and found.
Thanks, Jenny. Can I grab the clicker? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. My name is Alexis Smith. I'm a senior planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Oh, sorry. Or MAPC. We're the regional planning agency for Greater Boston. And as Jenny mentioned, This project covers the parcels that are zoned for multifamily and for business use in Arlington. Total about 9% of the town's area, and really, as you can see, focused on the main corridors of Mass Ave and Broadway, so the main streets in town. And this question actually already came up tonight. This is the current zoning map, and this project is not proposing any changes to the zoning map. It will stay, it will stay as is. And so what you will be the maps that are distributed around this evening are the current zoning map, just with the relevant zones that the particular piece of the proposal would impact highlighted. And I'm just going to run through really quickly because we want to get to the stations so that we can hear your thoughts. But I'm going to run quickly through some of the analysis that we did over the spring, summer, and fall to arrive at the recommendations that are before you tonight. First, we started off with a parcel analysis, and that was really to get an understanding of how many parcels in these multifamily districts and mixed-use districts support, how many of them comply with the existing density regulations and the existing minimum lot size regulations. And we found that many of them don't, particularly with regards to the residential districts. And so that's one of the things that informs some recommendations that you will be reviewing tonight. We also did, as Jenny mentioned, some more detailed build-out analyses on 4 different sites, which essentially just went through and looked at what could you build if you were an architect coming in and we're going to build multifamily on this site. What would happen? And we went through each piece of the zoning bylaw and looked at how that eventually kind of eats away at what can be built on a site. There's many pieces of it, many of which we're going to be discussing tonight, and each piece really impacts what you can build and how the site actually comes together as a possible development. And then based on that, we looked at tweaks that could be made to the zoning bylaw that would really enable multifamily to be built on that site. Again, just repeating what Jenny said, in these districts that are already zoned to be multifamily apartment or condo districts. And so I'm not going to get into those recommendations tonight because, not tonight, right now at this moment, because we are going to be talking about them in individual stations. At each station, there's a facilitator that will explain a specific aspect of what the proposed change is, and then there'll be an opportunity for us to hear from you about what you think of it. Our goal for tonight is to get really specific and targeted feedback from you on each of these ideas. So when you're at the open space station, we really want to hear from you what you think about the open space proposal. We're going to be splitting you into 4 groups. When you came in, you should have got a sheet of stickers, and at the bottom of that sheet, there's a number 1 through 4. So depending on what number you are, if you have number 1, you're going to be seeing Francis first. If you have a number 2, you're going to be going to Erin in the back. Number 3 will be with me in that corner, and number 4 will be with Alex over here. The number doesn't matter. We're going to be rotating stations, so you will get a chance to see every single station over the course of the evening. It's just telling you which station you're going to go to first, but you will have the chance to see every single one, so don't worry about that. And then we'll rotate. We have a lot of material to get through in a short amount of time tonight, and so we're going to be very strict about timekeeping, and when the time is up, we'll just rotate around in this direction, clockwise, I guess that is. And we understand that there is a limited amount of time, and so if you don't have enough time to say everything that you want to say, we have sticky notes for additional comments. There are sheets when you walked in, and I believe at each of the tables where you can write additional comments down. Let's see. And in the groups, we'll just ask that you introduce yourself, start off by asking any clarifying questions that you might have. And then when we're in the discussion, again, please stay focused on the discussion topic, and remember that we do have a lot of people here, which is fantastic. And that means there's a lot of thoughts that we want to hear from you, so try to keep your comments brief. At the end of the discussion, you will be using those sticky notes to let us know what you think of the specific pieces of the proposal. An L A dot means that you like that part that you're seeing, the part of the proposal that you're seeing. A U means that you're unsure or that you have more questions. And a C means that you have concerns. So that's how you're voting with your dots. But again, if you have additional thoughts, we welcome them on sticky notes or on the comment sheet, or flagging any one of us after the meeting. And so with that, I invite, we're going to be having, we're going to really, we want to have time for discussion in the groups. And so we're.
This is a very important question. I'm sorry, we know it's an important place. You've got a well-designed meeting, but before we get to the thoughts, I really have a very, very large base question. How many units are we talking about for Arlington to help meet the state goal of 185,000 units? How many of those will be affordable? How many will be low income?
I actually don't have the answer to that, but it is something that we're working on, and we will be providing that in the future as these discussions continue. And now I really, really want us to get to the groups so that we can hear your thoughts. So I'm going to ask everybody to split up and head to the station that they're assigned to, and we can continue the conversation there. Thank you.
I would love to ask, I'm going to interrupt Francis, Aaron, Alexis, somewhere deep over there, and Alex. If they could join me up here, and we're going to do a very quick report out, because they had the benefit of listening to most or all of you and seeing you all vote, I hope. And so they're going to actually give you a little bit of a report out. But before I do that, you have to sit down again, or at least just direct your attention to me. And again, I'm going to ask Francis and Aaron and Alexis and Alex to come on up here. So I know you guys are here. That's half of you. Great, I did it. All right, we're going to start reporting out then. We're just going to do it. Okay. So here's Francis.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and great conversations around density and lot size. We heard many different thoughts. There was some questioning about whether the minimum lot area per residential unit would mean that only a handful of units could get built, and whether that meant that we would not have enough affordable housing to be included. If 1 in 6 units are affordable and developers only build 5 units, then what happens? There were some concerns about whether this would impact existing businesses or existing residential areas, specifically if new development happens. How does that negatively impact businesses? There were some folks were receptive to the fact that the current zoning isn't really reflected in reality, so there's a lot of unconforming lots, and this would actually allow them to be redeveloped. So folks were excited about that. And I think they were very receptive to how the Capitol Theater looks and some of these examples of minimum lot size and density. That's all.
All right, thanks, Francis. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming over and learning a little bit about parking and what's being proposed. We heard a lot of different comments, some things that people liked about the proposal, other things that people had concerns with. I heard that people liked that the proposal would make developments less expensive, that there could be more land used to reduce stormwater runoff, and some other green initiatives. And I heard some things that people liked, that it would reduce the amount of cars that are on the road, and other things that fall under those kind of categories. There were also some concerns about the proposal as well. I heard that people were concerned that if there's not enough off-street parking, that parking could spill onto on-street parking areas, and that it could affect other properties and other businesses in the area. And I heard a lot of people felt like there are a lot of people in Arlington that do need a car. So, so there was some things that people liked and some concerns as well.
Hi, so I was at the height buffer and step back station, and on the height buffer was a hot topic for sure. I heard a lot that there was significant concerns with the reduction of the height buffer to 25 to 50 feet. So that is something that I think we'll have to take a harder look at related to the recommendations. I think as it relates to the step back, the feeling was a little bit more mixed. Mass Ave is a wide enough street to accommodate the height buffer increasing a story. However, I think when you're talking about heights, and this is something that I certainly heard at my station, is that the shadows can be significant, and it's a concern, particularly when we have high-density residential districts adjacent to lower residential districts. So that, I think, is the feedback that I definitely received.
I was at the open space station. We had a lot of great conversation. Some folks were of the mindset that 20% of the total building area actually is a fair amount of open space. That's great. There were also a lot of concerns that Arlington is a green town and we want it to stay that way, and reducing the total amount of open space is something that concerned folks. In terms of allowing the amount, particularly a thought that came up over and over again was the permeable surfaces and how the impacts on sustainability questions and stormwater runoff was a big one. In terms of allowing a portion of open space to be provided on a roof deck. Some folks thought, hey, that might be cool. There were a lot of people who had concerns with, but then the visual amenity to the entire town is not going to be visible if it's on the roof. And a lot of people had questions about including balconies in there, that is particularly not a publicly accessible visual amenity. So thank you all for your feedback.
All right, so we're almost at 8:30. I'm going to tell you what's happening next, which is the ARB is having their meeting on January 16th, which is next Wednesday night. It's here at Town Hall in the second floor meeting room. It's not at the Senior Center, no. The second floor meeting room here in Town Hall Annex, and they meet at 7:30 p.m. That evening is when they would make a vote to file any warrant articles for town meeting. The warrant article deadline is coming up, and that is their meeting prior to that deadline. So some of you have seen perhaps a very draft version of that, which was discussed at their most recent meeting. And after we've had all this feedback tonight, and I've frankly been talking about other ones of the articles that we're looking at, we'll be making amendments. We'll be posting that with the agenda like we do every time. I'll get to your question in a moment. When we post everything, we post all of the agenda items to Novus Agenda, so you can, if you're not familiar with the system, the Arlington Redevelopment Board posts its meetings and all of the information about its meetings. The supplemental materials are all uploaded online. So if you haven't engaged yet in any of these conversations, or if you're not familiar with the board and what it does, I would, ask you to take a look online and feel free to peruse and see what exactly your local planning board does, and the kinds of things that they talk about and make decisions about. And of course, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to contact me. I did put a business card or two on the table. Again, feel free to reach out to me. So once they file their warrant articles, they will then be going through a process of developing language, which is really the vote that goes to town meeting. And as part of that process, they're required to have noticed public hearings, meaning not noticed, like as in they get noticed, but they get advertised as a legal notice in the local newspaper so that people are aware of them. Of course, there will be other ways that will get the word out so you become aware of all the opportunities that you would have to engage at a public hearing. And then town meeting, for those of you who don't know, happens April 22nd, which is coming up. So those are, I think, the primary next steps, and that was the end. But I know that a couple of you might have some questions, so I'm happy to stay after to answer those other questions, but for now I'm going to wrap up because we are at 8:30. Respectfully to everybody here, thank you so much for coming this evening, so good night.
Before everybody leaves, my name is Asha Kepka. I live in East Arlington. I know a lot of people were present here voting. I've been hearing Broadway Mass doesn't, the whole Arlington will be affected. Can I have a raise of hands who actually lives in the areas that are going to be impacted by the plan? So less than a half people present here. We're voting.
We're not voting. We're talking about things.
What I'd like to say is that I just found out about this project. I just found out about this project. I appreciate the work you guys are doing, but I would like for the community to be able to be heard. I represent a large number of people from Salt Street and neighboring areas. Nobody knows about this. I can't believe how fast this is progressing. I am on the board of Arlington Cultural Council. We do things slowly, and our decisions don't impact the town as dramatically as this one is. I've been here for 20 years, and I just found out about Emmy. See, I mean, to me, this is absurd that people who are residents don't have a chance to speak out. That I
Respectfully again, Anderson, I appreciate you.
I don't even know who these people are. Most of the people in my area that's affected dramatically don't know either. And I think this process has to slow down dramatically for the good of people.